Queen's Academy was a school of prestige, known for strict discipline and academic excellence. But beneath the surface, there were students who lived a double life, girls who sneaked out at night and returned before dawn, slipping back into their uniforms as though nothing had happened. Amara, Linda, and BC had always been among the quiet ones. They shared a dormitory, attended classes together, and lived the modest lives of students from struggling families. Unlike their wealthier classmates, they couldn't afford expensive perfumes, designer shoes, or the latest gadgets. At first, they told themselves it didn't matter. But the more they saw their classmates flaunting their luxuries, the more the jealousy burned. One afternoon, as they sat under a mango tree after class, Linda spoke first. "I'm tired of this broke life," she muttered, watching a group of rich girls taking selfies with their new iPhones. "Look at Sandra and her friends. Every term they come back with the latest fashion. Do you think their parents are the ones giving them all that money?" Amara smirked. "Of course not. You think it's their fathers buying them Gucci bags? They have sponsors." BC frowned. "Sponsors? You mean older men?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "You sound so surprised. Haven't you noticed how some of them sneak out at night?" BC hesitated. "But how do they do it?" Amara leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's a weak spot in the fence behind the hostel. Some girls use it to sneak out. I overheard Sandra talking about it in the bathroom." Linda exhaled. "Imagine us going to one of those big clubs, meeting men who just throw money around. We could have everything we've ever wanted." BC shifted uncomfortably. "And if we get caught?" Amara shrugged. "We won't. If they can do it, so can do it, so can." Linda grinned. "Just once. For fun." That night, they made their decision. They wore simple jeans and hoodies, slipping out of the dormitory at midnight. Amara led them to the fence, where a loose wooden plank provided just enough space for them to squeeze through. On the other side, a black car was waiting. "I told you I had connections," Amara said smugly as they climbed in. The man driving the car was in his 30s, dressed in expensive clothes and wearing a thick gold chain. He glanced at them through the rearview mirror and chuckled. "You girls sure you're ready for this?" Linda smiled. "We were born ready." The car sped off into the night. The club was unlike anything they had ever seen. Lights flashed in dazzling colors. Music pulsed through the walls, and the air was thick with perfume and cigar smoke. Men in expensive suits lounged in private booths, sipping drinks and watching the girls on the dance floor. Linda felt a rush of excitement. This was nothing like their dull school life. Here they were queens. Drinks were handed to them. They giggled, sipped cautiously at first, then with more confidence. The men were generous, slipping crisp bills into their hands and telling them they were beautiful. By dawn, they were exhausted but exhilarated. As the black car dropped them off near the school fence, Amara grinned. "That was easy," she said, "and look at this." She held up a stack of money. Linda's eyes widened. "We just made more in one night than our parents send us in a whole term." BC bit her lip. It felt wrong. Amara's coughed. "Then don't spend your share." BC fell silent. They slipped back into the dormitory just before morning prayers. And so it began. Every weekend they snuck out, growing bolder each time. Soon, they had new clothes, perfumes, and expensive weaves. Their classmates started whispering, "Where do they get all that money? They must have a rich uncle." No one suspected the truth. But the night had its price, and the price was coming. At first, everything seemed perfect. The money was flowing, their wardrobes were growing, and they had become the envy of their classmates. Amara, Linda, and BC walked through Queen Academy with their heads held high, basking in the admiration of girls who wished they could live their lives. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. BC's declining health. One evening, as the girls sat in their dormitory, BC rubbed her temples, wincing. Headache again? Amara asked, inspecting her newly manicured nails. BC nodded, and I've been feeling tired all the time. Even after I sleep, I wake up exhausted. Linda frowned. Maybe you need to eat more. You barely finish your food these days. BC shrugged. I just don't have an appetite. Amara dismissed it. You're probably just stressed. We've been partying hard. You should take a break. BC sighed but said nothing. Deep down, she felt something was wrong. The next morning, during assembly, she felt lightheaded as the principal droned on about discipline. Her vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness hit her. The voices around her faded. Then darkness. When she woke up, she was lying in the school clinic. The nurse was standing over her, frowning. You've lost a lot of weight, the nurse said, pressing a hand to BC's forehead. You need proper medical attention. BC swallowed hard. Is it serious? The nurse hesitated. We'll need to run some tests. Fear gripped her heart. Linda's secret fear. While BC battled exhaustion, Linda was drowning in her own secret terror. Her period was late. At first, she brushed it off. Maybe the stress of sneaking out, drinking, and partying had affected her cycle. But then another week passed, and another. One night after lights out, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The fear clawed at her chest. It's just stress, she told herself. It has to be. But deep inside, doubt whispered a different story. The next afternoon, during free period, Linda snuck out of school and went to a small pharmacy near the market. The shop attendant barely looked at her as he handed over a pregnancy test kit. Her hands trembled as she stuffed it into her pocket and hurried back to school. Later that night, she locked herself in the bathroom. The other girls were asleep. The dormitory was quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl outside. With shaky fingers, she unwrapped the test and followed the instructions. Minutes later, she stared at the result. To read lines. Linda's heart stopped. No, she whispered. She shook the test, as if that would change the result. But the lines remained, bold and undeniable. She sank to the floor, gripping her hair. This couldn't be happening. How would she tell Amara and BC? What would her parents say? Her glamorous world was crumbling. Amara remained oblivious to the troubles her friends were facing. She was still reveling in their night escapades, believing she was untouchable. One night, she received a message from one of her clients, a rich businessman who had taken a special interest in her. Meet me tonight. I have something special for you. Amara grinned. She loved the gifts he gave her: jewelry, perfumes, even cash. That night, the three girls sneaked out as usual. Linda, still in shock over her pregnancy, barely spoke. BC, feeling weak, nearly backed out but forced herself to go. The club was packed. Music boomed from the speakers, and flashing lights painted the room in shades of red and blue. Amara's sponsor was waiting for her in a private booth, a bottle of champagne on the table. Come here, beautiful, he said, pulling her onto his lap. She laughed, but something about his grip felt different tonight, stronger, almost possessive. She reached for her glass, but he stopped her. Tonight, I have something better for you, he said, pulling out a small packet of white powder. Amara's stomach twisted. Try it, he urged. It'll make you feel amazing. A year ago, she would have gasped in horror. But she wasn't the same Amara anymore. She hesitated, her mind torn between excitement and fear. Then she saw his expression change. His smile was gone. His eyes were sharp, waiting for her reaction. She forced a laugh. Not tonight. I just want to dance. He narrowed his eyes. Are you saying no to me? Amara's pulse raced. She knew how dangerous men like him could be. She needed to get away. Just then, she spotted Linda and BC across the club. BC looked pale, swaying slightly. Linda sat stiffly, lost in thought. I'll be right back, Amara said, slipping away before he could stop her. As soon as she reached her friends, she grabbed their hands. "We need to go. Now?" Linda looked up, startled. "Why?" "No time. Just move." The three girls hurried out of the club. As they stepped outside, Amora's phone buzzed. "You think you can just walk away from me?" A chill ran down her spine. Something told her they had just escaped a disaster. But little did they know the real disaster was still coming. The days that followed were filled with an unbearable silence. Linda barely spoke, her secret weighing on her like a heavy stone. BC grew weaker, her body betraying her as exhaustion settled deep in her bones. Amora, usually full of energy, was distracted, checking her phone constantly, afraid of the businessman's threats. For the first time, the thrill of their secret life had turned into fear. One afternoon, while other students were in class, BC sat in a school clinic, waiting for her test results. The air felt thick, the walls too bright, the ticking clock too loud. The nurse finally entered, holding a file. BC sat up. "So what's wrong with me?" The nurse hesitated, then sighed. "BC, your results show that you need further medical tests outside the school." BC's stomach clenched. "Why? What did you find?" The nurse's eyes softened. "I can't say for sure. But your symptoms: fatigue, weight loss, dizziness, they could mean something serious. We need to be sure." BC's fingers dug into her skirt. "Something serious? Like what?" The nurse didn't answer. "I'll write a letter for your parents. You need to go to a hospital immediately." BC swallowed hard. She already knew. Deep down, she knew. That night, after lights out, Linda tossed and turned in bed. Sleep refused to come. She could still see those to read lines in her mind. Still hear her own panicked whisper, "No, no, no, no." She had thought about telling Amora and BC. But every time she opened her mouth, fear choked her. Instead, she carried the burden alone. Finally, unable to take it anymore, she slipped out of bed and went to the dormitory bathroom. Standing in front of the mirror, she pulled up her oversized shirt and placed a trembling hand on her stomach. Was something growing inside her? Was her life over? A sob bubbled in her throat. She gripped the sink, breathing heavily. Then the door creaked. She spun around. Amora stood at the doorway, arms crossed. "What are you doing here?" Amora asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. Linda tried to steady her voice. I just needed air." Amora took a step forward. "You've been acting weird for days. What's going on?" Linda's hands clenched into fists. "Nothing." "Liar." Amora's voice softened. "Come on, Linda. Talk to me." Linda looked at her best friend, the girl she had laughed with, snuck out with, shared secrets with. Her lips trembled. Then, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, "I'm pregnant." Amora froze. For a moment, the only sound was the drip of a leaking faucet. Then, "What?" Amora's voice rose in shock. Shanda hissed, panic flashing across her face. "Do you want to wake everyone?" Amora dragged her into a corner. "Are you sure?" Linda nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I took the test twice." Amora's mind spun. This wasn't just bad, this was catastrophic. Linda wiped her eyes. "What do I do?" "Amora," her voice cracked, "my mother will kill me. My father, he'll never forgive me." Amora inhaled sharply, trying to think. "We'll figure something out." Linda gave a bitter laugh. "Figure what out? I can't hide this forever." Amora grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. We survived worse. We'll find a way." But deep down, Amora wasn't sure. This was bigger than anything they had ever faced. Amora's own nightmare. As Amora comforted Linda, she felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She pulled it out and her blood ran cold. It was a message from him. "You think you can run?" Her fingers trembled as she read the next message. "I know where you go to school." A cold shiver crawled up her spine. Amora had seen what men like him were capable of. Girls went missing all the time. and now she had made an enemy of someone powerful. Her pulse pounded. They had to stop. They had to get out before it was too late. But it was already too late. The beginning of the end. The next morning, Linda sat in class, staring blankly at her notebook. The teacher's voice was a blur. BC was absent, probably still at the clinic. E. Morris sat beside her, but neither spoke. Then the door swung open. The school nurse walked in. "Linda," she called. Linda's heart stuttered. "Come with me." Whispers rippled through the classroom as Linda stood, her legs shaking. As soon as she stepped into the hallway, the nurse turned to her with an unreadable expression. "You fainted in class yesterday," she said. Linda swallowed. "I was just tired." The nurse exhaled. "We know." Linda's breath caught. "Know what?" The nurse folded her arms. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" Linda's world collapsed. She shook her head wildly. "No, I. The nurse's gaze softened. Linda, the school will have to inform your parents." Linda's knees buckled. She gripped the wall for support. No. The walls felt like they were closing in. The life she knew was over. She had made a mistake, and now she would pay the price. At that same moment, BC sat in a hospital waiting room, staring at the envelope in her hands. Her test results. She had asked the nurse to let her open them alone. Her hands trembled as she peeled the seal and unfolded the paper. Her eyes skimmed the words, then stopped. A sharp gasp escaped her lips. Her heart pounded. "No, oh no, it's she." Tears blurred her vision. The paper slipped from her hands and floated to the floor. She covered her mouth, shaking violently. HIV. The word burned into her brain like fire. She was going to die. A choke sob tore from her throat. How had this happened? How had she ruined her life like this? Her world tilted. Everything was gone. The truth comes out. By evening, the school had discovered everything. Linda's pregnancy, BC's illness, Emora's suspicious connections. The principal's office was silent as the three girls stood before the disciplinary committee. "You have disgraced this institution," the principal said coldly, sneaking out. "Drinking, sleeping with men. Now look at the consequences." Linda's face was wet with tears. BC looked empty, hollow. Amora stared at the ground, her body tense. The principal shook her head. "There is only one punishment for this." The girls held their breath. "You are all expelled." Linda crumpled to the floor. BC let out a shuddering sob. Amara closed her eyes, swallowing the scream rising in her throat. Their nightmare just begun. The night air inside the dormitory was still, heavy with the scent of body lotion and the soft murmur of sleeping girls. Outside, the trees rustled against the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows through the windows. Imara lay curled on her bunk, her forehead slick with sweat. At first, she thought it was just the exhaustion catching up with her, the sleepless nights, the alcohol, the endless cycle of sneaking out. But this pain was different. It was deep, sharp, clawing at her insides like something was tearing her apart from within. She groaned, pressing a hand to her stomach. BC, lying on the bed beside hers, turned over sleepily. Amora. Amara's breath came in quick gasps. I don't feel right." BC sat up instantly, the drowsiness fading from her eyes. "What do you mean? What's wrong?" Before Amora could answer, another wave of pain slammed into her, doubling her over. A strangled cry escaped her lips. She clenched her stomach, her fingers trembling. Linda, who had been lying awake in her bed, lost in her own thoughts, bolted upright. "Amora, what's going on?" By now, Amora was shaking violently, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Sweat poured down her face. The pain was unbearable, unlike anything she had ever felt. I don't know," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "It hurts her." BC rushed to her side. "We need to get help." No, Amara wheezed, shaking her head. If they find out, we'll be finished. Linda's face twisted with fear. But BC was already out of bed. Her heart pounding. Forget that, you need help. She ran to the door, hesitated for a second, then banged on it with all her strength. Somebody help, please. The desperate cries sliced through the silent dormitory like a blade. The other girls stirred, voices rising in confusion. Moments later, the dormitory door burst open, and the matron stormed in, her face contorted with anger. What is going on here? She stopped short at the sight of Amara, curled into herself, writhing in pain. The strict woman's face hardened. Get up. What's wrong with you? But Amara could barely move. The pain was too much. BC near tears turned to the matron. Something is wrong with her. Ma, we need to take her to the clinic. The matron frowned, but one look at Amara's ashen face was enough. She barked an order at one of the prefects, who rushed out to fetch the school nurse. Linda and BC hovered over Amara, their hearts slamming against their ribs. BC grabbed Amara's sweaty hands. You'll be okay, she whispered. You'll be okay. But deep down, fear gripped her. Would she really? The door flung open again, and the nurse rushed in. Clutching her medical kit, she knelt beside Amara, checking her pulse, her temperature. Her frown deepened. She needs to be taken to the hospital, now. The matron stiffened. Is it that serious? The nurse stood, her face unreadable. It's very serious. Within minutes, Amara was lifted onto a stretcher and rushed out of the dormitory. BC and Linda watched, rooted to the spot, their world spinning out of control. For months, they had lived recklessly, believing they were untouchable. But now, the illusion was crumbling, and they were terrified of what would come next. The news of their expulsion spread like wildfire. Students whispered in the hallways. Teachers shook their heads in disappointment, and the principal's voice thundered through the school as he delivered the final verdict. There is no place for such disgraceful behavior in this institution. You are hereby expelled, effective immediately. Linda, BC, and Amara stood frozen in front of his desk, their world crumbling around them. Tears streamed down Linda's face as she clutched her stomach. Please, sir, have mercy. But there was no mercy. BC's heart pounded. She couldn't believe this was happening. Just weeks ago, they had been at the top of their game, confident, untouchable, ruling the night. Now, everything was gone. When they were sent home, the real nightmare began. Linda's mother collapsed when she heard the news. You have ruined your future. She sobbed, holding her head in her hands. How could you do this to yourself? Linda begged, pleaded for another chance. But her mother wouldn't hear of it. I have nothing more to give you. I sacrificed everything for you to get an education, and you threw it away. She was thrown out that same night. BC fared no better. Her father stood at the doorway, his face hard as stone. You are no longer my daughter, he said, his voice cold and final. Get out of my house. She tried to explain, to tell him she was sick, that she needed help, but he turned his back and slammed the door shut. Amara's uncle, the one who had struggled to pay her school fees, looked at her with disgust. You brought disgrace to this family. He spat. I will not waste another kobo on you. He handed her a small bag of clothes and sent her away without a second glance. And just like that, they were homeless. At first, they stuck together. The streets were harsh, but at least they had each other. They wandered from place to place, sleeping in abandoned buildings, begging for food and avoiding the dangers that lurked in the night. Linda, pregnant and vulnerable, struggled the most. The hunger, the exhaustion, it was unbearable. She cradled her growing belly, wondering how she would bring a child into this unforgiving world. BC, sick and weak, barely managed to stand some days. Her body ached, her skin burned with fever, and the weight of her mistakes pressed heavily on her soul. Amara, once the boldest of them all, had lost all hope. She sat in silence most days, staring into space, replaying their downfall over and over in her mind. The glamorous life they once slaved had disappeared. No more designer clothes, no more expensive perfumes, no more VIP lounges or flashing city lights. Now they were just three lost girls, swallowed by the very night they once ruled. And there was nowhere left to run. The cold night air wrapped around them like a cruel embrace. Beneath the old bridge, Linda, Bisi, and Amora huddled together, their once vibrant spirits reduced to shadows of who they used to be. Linda cradled her swollen belly, staring blankly at the passing cars. Hunger gnawed at her insides, but it was nothing compared to the fear of what lay ahead. Bisi coughed weakly, her body frail and exhausted from untreated illness. Amora, the once fearless leader of their trio, sat in silence, eyes vacant. Was this truly how their story would end? Then, one evening, fate intervened. A woman approached them, her face kind but firm. She was dressed simply, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. "I've heard about you girls," she said. Crouching beside them, "You don't belong here." Linda looked away. "Where else do we have to go?" The woman sighed. "I run a shelter for young girls like you. It won't be easy, but if you're ready to change, I can help you." Amora's throat tightened. Was this another trick? Another empty promise? But when she looked into the woman's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. That night, they followed her to the shelter. For the first time in months, they had a roof over their heads. Warm meals, a bed to sleep in. It felt unreal. Linda was given medical attention and safely delivered a baby girl, a tiny, innocent life that had no part in the mistakes of the past. As she held her daughter for the first time, she wept. "I will never let you suffer the way I did," she whispered, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead. Bisi, after months of denial, finally started treatment. She was weak, but she had a chance to live. Amora, filled with guilt and regret, found a new purpose. She started speaking to young girls, sharing their story. "Don't make the same mistakes we did," she would say, "no matter how tempting the world seems. Not everything that shines is gold." At Queen's Academy, their names became legend. The girls who once ruled the night had become a cautionary tale, a warning whispered in dormitories, a story told to newcomers.